Okay, guys, so a quick recap from chapter 1. We have discovered that Colten is not a normal guy. He didn't react to his mother's death in the way any of us would. We'd be pretty aggressively sad if our moms died, right? But not Colten. He has that monotone reaction, almost closed off. We've also seen that he's got this really weird obsession with Miss Klindley, right? Now, if you combined a simmering obsession with buried pain and trauma, you get something pretty spectacular. And that is what we're working towards. Now, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, do all that stuff that YouTube loves, please. And let's start a discussion on Substack. In the show notes, there's a link to my Substack where you can read a more in-depth and personal account of this story. Thanks for watching. On to chapter 2. Colten watched as Miss Klindley's slight frame and sandy hair cut through the rays of morning light. Now, the school has been upgrading, modernizing as they call it, over the last few years, but Colten still loved the fun fishbowl of activity, that horseshoe courtyard, the original squarish horseshoe where everything was. He had the playground over here. There was a garden over here from the biology center. The lunchroom cafeteria let out into the courtyard, and all across the top were classrooms where everybody can see into each other's rooms. And Colten watched Miss Klindley every morning. And she busied herself, watering her plants. She was diligent. Every morning she watered a certain plant or plants, trimming certain leaves. She must have had 20 plants on her window shelf there, looking under the courtyard. But on this morning, and no other morning for the last 5 or so years, Miss Klindley never looked out into the courtyard. Colten watched her day in and day out. She never even glanced into the classrooms. She never looked at the kids playing on the court, playing on the playground. She never did it once. And it was this morning where everything for Colten came to a head. He realized, why is she even here? Sure, she was a great teacher on paper, and some of the other teachers loved her, but he couldn't stop thinking. He couldn't stop visualizing why this person was even here. She was like a tiger caged at the zoo. Beautiful, but dangerous. And he had to figure out why. He had been harping on it over the years since they were kindergartners, really since high school, but we'll get into that later. But since they were little kids, he always wondered, what is going on with her? She's so different. She's so unusual. And he hooked onto her, like a leech almost. And he observed her from afar, very rarely engaging her. But it was this day, this one day, very soon after his mother's death, that he decided, man, I've got to figure this out. But it was a catch-22, because the more you watch Miss Klindley, the more she just pulls you into her allure. The sun caught the glistening sweat going down her face and onto her chest, and Colten was instantly mesmerized. But then she disappeared behind the glare from the glass, and then reappeared apparition-like. And he just watched. He studied. He was transfixed, and he knew he had a class coming in. The first period was coming, and he still watched. But there was time. There was still 15 minutes before that bell rang, and he thought back. He's like, man, this girl was once fun-loving. She was a little kid like me. We played. What happened to her? She's been reclusive, more withdrawn, more stern even. If you look into her eyes on the rare occasion she lets you, it's almost like she's two different people. The pretty face and then something else beneath. So he watched. Her class were the little kids, and they came in first. She teaches elementary school, and Colten teaches high school. Her class starts rushing in. You know, they're fifth graders, so they're not too small, but they're rushing in. They get into their desks, you know. Immediately, Colten notices Thomas. See, he's friends with Thomas's dad, and this has been a topic around the school. Thomas has been withdrawn. He was like the basketball prodigy of the school. They thought he was going to be a star in high school when he got older. And he was always fun-loving, but over the last few weeks, Thomas became sullen, angry, and dirty even. He just refused to even clean himself. Thomas came in and put his legs in front of his desk in front of him and then hunched over. And Colten saw this, and he sat in back, and he saw Miss Klindley, and she immediately caught him out of the corner of her eye. And she kept an eye on Thomas as she perused the desks. peruse the desks. Now, Colten had first period off. I think I might have screwed that up earlier, but Colten has first period off. He teaches high school. Most high schoolers at this school have first period study hall. So he was off the hook. And he's watching this unfold. The bell rings, and he's watching Miss Quinley's class, and she's going through, very rarely going up to the chalkboard, which is unusual for an elementary teacher. She teaches biology, science really is what they call it, right? But she has worksheets. She even makes her own worksheets up, and she passes them out every class, and she walks around the desks watching them do their worksheet and answering questions. Anybody has a question or needs help, she goes to them and helps them. That's her teaching style, which is fine. But Thomas notices every time she leans in today, she's gripping, almost white knuckling. Now, he can't tell from too far away, right? Like, he's across the courtyard, so he can't be sure. But it looks like she's leaning over on one side, really nice, but her hand and back is gripping the back of the chair. And it makes him so uneasy that he gets a little shiver down his back, despite the heat. I mean, this is the South, getting towards the end of the school year, and 1989, there's no AC. There's not ACs in small schools these days. In the school that my kids go to, there's no AC, and that's today. So it's hot, but he gets that shiver. And then she finally makes it to Thomas. She hadn't gone to him. He hasn't done anything on his worksheet. But she gets to Thomas, and she leans in really close. So close that Thomas finally sits up and puts his head down. And that is the tell that Colten's been waiting for. He's on the edge of his desk. He's looking out like this from his desk, just staring off at him. And he hadn't noticed, but most of the class had gone by. And he gets a knock on his door. And he doesn't even answer. He doesn't even respond. And all of a sudden, the door flings open. Colten! Mr. Tallendale, the bear man himself, walks in. Now, Colten likes Tallendale. He does. He can be a little rambunctious or annoying, but he means well. And Colten's like, what? Tallendale, what? And he's like, man, that paint smell, that gray penitentiary paint that they're painting the whole school these days. You smell that? I smell it. It was supposed to be done this weekend, and I come in here, and it smells. And Colten's like, yeah, I guess I smell it. And Mr. Tallendale's like, I should file a complaint. We should not have to sit here through fuming paint smells. And Colten gets a little smile on his face because despite what's going on with Quinley, he looks at Tallendale knowing that he can set him off, and that gets him really excited. And he just goes a little bit smirk, and he's like, Tallendale, you know that I can smell your cigarettes at lunch when you go under the courtyard, right? And Tallendale huffs and puffs, and he's like, whatever. And right after Tallendale left, the bell rang. An annoying sounding bell, the kind that goes, Colten took one last look over at Miss Quinley's room, but the kids were already pouring out. He didn't even get to see Thomas get up, how he got up, his mannerisms, nothing. Miss Quinley was already standing by the door, the last kid going out. Okay, so that wraps it up for Chapter 2. Chapter 3 will be next week. If you literary-minded people out there want to read a more in-depth, detailed, and personal account of this story, just head over to my Substack. It's free. It's right in the link in the description below. I'll see you guys next week.